going in, to this home stretch of the season, and now you're in a position where both you and North Carolina State are vying for bowl eligibility.
Well, I think our backs were against the wall with Boston College, and they're probably still there. I think we knew going in we had 4 games left, all of them really good football teams. I'm glad we made enough plays this past Saturday to win, but I think we'll have to play a little bit better this Saturday at Carter Finley.
I know you were asked after the game on Saturday about NC State and their performance against Virginia, and you guys can't pay attention to that. You're going to play an angry team or whatnot this upcoming Saturday because of the way they perform. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I think, in this league, everybody's good. Everybody's got good players, and you can't take anybody for granted from week to week. I wasn't surprised that Virginia, won that football game. I think Virginia's a really good football team. They got a lot of good players, and I think it just proves that every week you've got to play. And, the more veteran players know that. Sometimes the young guys take teams for granted, but I know, probably NC State was a little bit surprised with Virginia, but they won't be without motivation this Saturday. I know going into their place, they're going to be spitting nails and ready to play football again, and we're going to play great to have a chance.
What are you expecting out of them offensively and defensively?
Well, I think we're pretty well along in our seasons right now, so I don't think either team's going to reinvent the wheel. We're going to do what we've been doing, try to do it a little bit better, I think.
It's an in-state rivalry at the same time with both teams vying for bowl eligibility. Does that add a little bit more flavor to the rivalry this weekend? Well,
a lot of our kids have played against their kids in high school, and some of them have been teammates with their kids in high school. So I think anytime you have familiarity from a personnel standpoint, it makes it a rivalry. And we know they're a really good football team. I mean, these guys beat Florida State. I mean, if you beat Florida State, now you're a heck of a football team. And so we know what they're capable of. We know we're going to take their best shot. And hopefully our guys will continue to be motivated. We've got to have great effort out of our guys for the next 3 weeks.
For your team specifically, you guys have some momentum going into this one off the win, especially on the offensive side. Camp and Tanner getting back into the rhythm, and then on the defensive side of the ball, you guys are creating turnovers, and I know that's a staple of your program.
Well, yeah, throughout the season you have ups and downs, and the key is if you've had a bad week to be able to bounce back. If you had a good week, keep your feet on the ground and keep playing good. And that's our kind of football. If we play good defense, it means we're finding a way to create some turnovers, and then offensively, our first thought's take care of the football, but you got to score points against the teams we're playing against. If you're not able to score a few points, it's going to be hard to win.
Coach, 12 ACC coaches, you guys are a pretty small fraternity. Coach O'Brien seems to be getting a lot of heat, criticism. Is there a sense of empathy, for you, because again, it is a very small fraternity?
Well, it's the same for all of us. You're only as good as your last game, and sometimes even if you win, that's not good enough. You didn't throw it enough, you didn't run it enough, you didn't blitz enough. Sometimes you can win and people aren't happy with the way you win. But I think it's a week-to-week deal. You got to play good every week, and when you don't play well, people are going to criticize you.
Do you ever get used to the criticism? You know what I mean? Or you just kind of learn to ignore it?
Well, I don't know, for whatever reason, I've never had a lot of problem with criticism because most of the time it's justified. They're reiterating things that I've already thought or that we've already talked about as a coaching staff. A lot of the things that when you're not playing well that you do are pretty obvious. It doesn't take a lot of football background to figure some things out. Some things go a little bit deeper. There are some things that influence you, but I think for the most part, criticism's mostly justified. Sometimes it's a little bit off base, but we know that winning's important not only to coaches and to the players, but to the fans.
I think last week's game really kind of proved how valuable Michael Campanaro is to your club.
Yeah, well, that's one thing that makes you coach better when your guys play better, And when Camp's out there, we've talked about it before, but Mike's a really good player, but he also brings something to our team. The other 10 guys raise their level a little bit when he's on the field. So he's been very important to us, not only for 16 catches and 3 touchdowns, but just for what he does for the rest of the team.
When you're recruiting, obviously he's got that it factor. How hard is it to find guys with that it factor?
It's a little bit of a roll of the dice. There's no science to it. You really try to look for players that have a real love for the game. That's one of your most important factors. But in Cam's case, if you got too caught up in height, weight, and speed, he might not be a guy that's on your radar. But he was such a good high school football player. We thought that he might contribute like Kenny Moore did as a running back. We actually did some of that the last time we were at NC State. And felt like he could be the perfect slot guy to come in and replace Kenny. But you never know if they're going to develop the way he's developed. You never know if they're going to become a real go-to guy. And it takes 2 or 3 years to find out how good they're really going to be.
Yeah, in some sports they call them workout warriors. Guys that run the 40, do the lift the bench reps and all that kind of stuff. They're kind of workout warriors, but they're not necessarily football players.
Yeah.
Is that sort of your focus, when you're looking, on the recruiting trail? I mean, you want football players first as opposed to workout warriors.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we used to call them bump All-Americans. They're guys that, for 6 days of the week they look like All-Americans, but when Saturday rolls around they can't get the job done. And it's tough. I mean, it's not. You find really good athletes, guys that you think are really good players. But in Mike Campanaro's case, he'd be the first guy picked on the sandlot. That's really the kind of guy you want in that position where you're going to ask him to run it and catch it, and sometimes even throw it. You'd like a guy that's kind of a all-around good football player, and that's Mike Campanaro.
Tanner, I think a lot of people expected a tremendous amount out of him. Some days he looks great, other days he doesn't look so hot. Sort of. Give us your opinion. How has he been? I mean, has he been the guy that you really, and the player you really thought he would be this year?
Well, I will say this. Tanner wants to be a great player every time out. I mean, he's a guy that wants to be the best he can be on the field on Saturday. And sometimes he has great games and sometimes not so great. But a lot of times, Tanner's success is tied to the other 10 guys, and not always. We want Tanner to play his best, and he missed some throws against Boston College, but I think he had a stretch where he went 14 for 14 during the game the other day. So he's got the potential to be better. He knows that, but he needs help. And so if the other 10 guys support him, he plays pretty good. And if he'll play a little bit better, he can be about as good as he wants to be. But I think Tanner knows that we're not hiding it. We want the other 10 to help him more, but we want him to play better.
Coach, I meant to ask you, how does your passing offense match up against NC State's secondary? Got All-Americans back there, all-conference players.
Yeah, they got great players. Good. This is a good defensive front that they've got. They'll put some pressure on Tanner more than we had last week. Good pass rushers, good coverage guys. They do a nice job mixing zone and man coverage. It'll be a challenge. They're a good football team and lots of good players, and be a little bit different challenge than we had this past week. I think we'll see a little bit more pressure type stuff from their defense, but we're going to need to throw the ball well, and we've got to catch it.
Last week you talked about the final few games. And sort of how they can make or break your season. How has practice been? Have the guys because this is a tough part of the year. Guys are dinged up, they're banged up. Have you seen the level of intensity, the focus and practice? How has that been for being this late in the year?
Well, you hear it all the time, the old coaching adage is people remember November, and for us it's really true. We got off to a good start. We've got 3 great teams left to play. But you really need to bring your best football right now. I mean, if you've ever played your best, now's the time to do it. And so we had a good practice last night. Our guys seem to be energized. They seem to be focused. I don't think we're satisfied right now with the win last Saturday. I think we know that our football's in front of us right now. And we can't beat any team on our schedule right now without a great effort on Saturdays.